Okay, first I'd like to start by acknowledging the custodians of the land and welcoming you all here. And before we start, I'm going to talk about culture, but I want our conversation today to be a challenging one. I just don't want us to sit here and talk to each other and feel good about life. We have to feel good about life anyway, but not also doom and gloom. So I want to engage in a challenging conversation with you, and I don't want to change your view about culture, but I want you to think about it differently. So let's start by, do we all know each other sitting next to each other? Do we know each other? No. Cool. So let's just turn to the person next to us and ask them about their name and make a guess about their culture. Just 1 minute, quick smart, 1, 2, 3. Okay. Right. It's always difficult to bring people back. Okay. All right. So what did we find about other people's culture? What did we find out? Just shout it.
We made a judgment.
We made a judgment. But where did the people come from? Or what cultural, what do we understand about culture when we talk to other people about their culture? Where you come from? Fantastic. What else? So where do people come from? Quick. New Zealand, Ireland, Chile, England, Colombia, France, Africa. Fantastic. I come from the Sudan. But this is where I want to challenge you about culture. Why did we go to geography? Culture exists everywhere. I'll tell you a quick story. I was talking to my son, and I was feeling this really good hip mom because I have engaged someone on the internet who lives in Pakistan to do some work for me, graphic design work for me. And he said, "Mom, go to the Fiverr website." So I'm not endorsing Fiverr or anything like, I'm just telling a story. So I said, okay, what does Fiverr do? He said, there are heaps of people from all over the world and it costs you little money. So I went to Fiverr, identified someone, paid them like $100 Australian, which was nothing to me, to get some cool designs. And I didn't like the design. So my son comes and says, "Mom, tell me how you went about it." I said, "Oh, I found this one among 2,000 people. I liked their previous work, and I engaged them." He said, "How much did you pay them?" I said, $100. He goes, "Mom, that just defeats the whole idea of Fiverr. Fiverr means you pay $5 to 5 people, give them the brief, and whoever comes back with something close to what you want, you go further with them and pay them a maximum of $30. Talk about culture. So culture is not geography. Culture is what's up there. It's the values. It's the things that holds different groups together. It's not just geography. Culture can be age, culture can be profession, culture can be a lot of other things. And it provides us, it's a toolkit. It provides us with, the habits, the skills that allow us to construct strategies. So the way I behave on certain things is based on the toolkit that my background, my knowledge, my experience has given me. It's not just what, or where I came from. And in the age of technology, culture, there is a technology culture. People talk about the technology divide. And these are all things that we need to think about within the social sciences context or the social work context that we're doing. So I'm going to talk about culture within 3 domains or within 3 frameworks. Culture as identity, culture as policy, and culture as service delivery. Okay? So culture as identity is belonging to a group of people, whether it's, by age, by ethnicity, by gender, by orientation, by love of something, musicians. I love listening to Bruce Springsteen, so that makes me a group of people who loves that, but not Madonna, who, politics. So culture is about everything, even by color. Somebody said to me, I love the green color you're wearing. So there you go, a group of greenies. Different types of green. Yeah. So the minute we talk about culture, we bring people in, but we also push others out who are not part of that culture. So there is immediately an us and them. And this is where the danger lies for us as social service people. The us and them. For us, we conform. People in the group conform. And that creates groupthink. I'm sure you're all aware of what groupthink is. And for the ones, the out group, that becomes problematic. Why is that problematic? Because for those who are in the in group, we automatically see ourselves or what holds us together as superior. We've got a feather in our cap. We all do this to a degree. Some of us go further, and some of us, just to a degree, we all do that. We feel good when we belong, because that's normal to us as human beings, a sense of belonging, being part of the in-group. And if you want to be part of the in-group and you are pushed out, you feel hurt. And just notice yourself or reflect back on when you first came here. People moved towards once they knew, and there were a few who were sprinkled around with no groups to belong to. How did those people feel? Probably rejected, a little bit down. And that's the danger of culture for the out group. But it's also quite dangerous for the in group. So just read this and think about it. You're a white male who applies for a job and is called for an interview. While at the waiting room, you pick up the annual report for the organization and flick. You find that all members of senior management in that organization are indigenous women. How confident you are that you'll get this job? People are shaking their head. Why? It's not the norm. I'm in the wrong place. Now, reflect on who we are as a community. You are someone from a different cultural background, like me. You check the website of a company you want to apply for. You go to their senior management, you go to their board, and they're all white Anglo-Saxons men. What chance do I have of getting that job? The danger of culture when we have an in-group. And the importance of having representation. Sometimes people talk about symbolic representation and it's valued, so substantive representation. It is important because when you flick that page or when you scroll on the website and you see a familiar face, that ignites hope. So reflect on your organizations. How many of you deliver services to people of cultural backgrounds? Reflect on your senior management. Does it reflect, mirror something to think about. Is that challenging or is that easygoing? Easygoing, awesome. Let's look at diversity stats, and Arthur talked a lot about how many people are born overseas and so on, which brings me back to the first point of where we started. We look at diversity, or we look at culture by geography, where you were born, or where your parents were born. And that to me is probably, for government it's okay, because they need to start somewhere. But for us, as people who operate, it's probably not the only thing that we need to think about, because it impacts our organization in terms of leadership. And these are stats about, some of the top companies, the percentage of multicultural people, talking about culture again as geography or as ethnicity. The higher you go up, the less people of ethnic background are there, considering that ethnicity comprises almost 1/4. So if there is appropriate representation, then we should see that reflected across the board. But the higher up we go, the less. There is a glass ceiling, but because we are in Asia, it's called the bamboo ceiling. At least with the glass ceiling, you can look up and see people there. With the bamboo ceiling, no way you can see anyone up there. Totally. So these are things to think about. So culture is not just about the delivery of service, and how that service is delivered, but about the context that we are part of. And that we as human beings are also cultural creatures. We might be a bigger group in the main group, but within that, there are different cultures based on a range of factors. So let's talk about culture. So that was culture as identity, the belonging. Now let's talk about culture as policy. So Arthur talked about culture as policy. And that is important for governments to look at culture as policy and have a parameter, because government needs to have budgets, need to have policies, need to put stuff out there and operate. They cannot manage all the domains of culture. So within that, also talked about inclusivity, living in harmony. He talked about legislation, the anti-discrimination. He talked about the charter, the multicultural charter. And there are also, programs for events, Chinese New Year, Refugee Day, the Indian Community Festival, the Moon Festival, a lot of stuff like that. That is what government does to empower people of minority cultures to feel included. And within the work that we do, when we talk about, within the policy, culture becomes at the service delivery level, something that government supports. Also talked about interpreting services. So all these things now fit in within that framework of culture. So I'll just flick very quickly to the Queensland Multicultural Charter. It talks about recognition of the Indigenous people, first of all, and then of all other diverse groups. But it does not talk about the mainstream. And that for me is problematic. So think about it. Again, why is it problematic? It normalizes the mainstream and it separates the diversity from the mainstream. So there is an us and them. And is that the best we want? Is that the best we can do? And once we separate, we start talking about harmony. So again, it becomes more difficult to talk about harmony once we've separated one from the other. We're not all the same. You are different for certain things, And then to ensure that service is responsive and diverse and so on. It's quite good reading the charter, the Queensland Charter. It's quite good reading if you have a look at it. it's got a really good framework. It encompasses a lot of things that we talked about today in terms of policy, in terms of the different aspects of policy. So I think I brought this in, to give us an understanding of why are there so many things that government does. Why is there an anti-discrimination commission? Why is there a Queensland Charter? Why is the federal government giving Muslim people money so that they can live in harmony with everything else? Because that sits within a framework of culture as policy, whether we agree with it or not, and within the framework of culture as service delivery. And this is what I want to talk about. So we started talking about culture within our own organization, and I want to keep that theme. Because when we talk about culture, we always talk about individuals. I think we also need to talk about culture, at an organizational level, because we all belong to organizations. And sometimes there is this dichotomy, or there is this separation. We go to work, we work, with multicultural people, we go back to our homes, we resume our lives within our in-group. And we forget. So there is a separation between the outside and the inside. We do not engage, we do not further. That's definitely not for all of us, but for some of us. We do not further our capacity, and that is something to think about. So when we talk about culture as service delivery, we talk usually, generally, about our clients. How do we deliver service to our clients? But let's talk about us as staff within the continuum of culture as service delivery. So again, I go back to the theme that we started with. Why is it important to talk about culture as staff? And I ask you a question. Think about your organization and the makeup of the people in your organization compared to the makeup of your client groups. And probably a lot of you know this graph. This was an experiment done by a university, I think in the US, where they had a CV. They put different names on the CV. One was, an Anglo-Saxon, one was a Middle Eastern, one was an Italian name. I don't know why the Italians, spaghetti. And one was an Asian name, and they sent it out to the same jobs. So they found out that if you were, Anglo-Saxon, the possibility of you getting an interview was much higher than if you were if your name was of Middle Eastern or of Asians. I think the Asians had to work the hardest to get an interview. The Italians, well, they had to sprinkle some charm and they would get in. I'm being very stereotypical, so forgive me if there are any Italians in the room. Forgive me. So again, this is something to think about within the context of our own organizations, because all of us sitting around this room employ people at some point in time. We are decision makers. So when we're employing people, think about the in-group. Think about the CVs. Think about the experience. And question yourself about your attitudes. Whom am I going to offer an opportunity for an interview? Sometimes if two people are neck and neck, we go for the safe bet. At least I know the culture of this person. I don't want a headache, life is tough. So this is something for us to think about and to challenge ourselves with. There is a lot of research that's been done about people from different cultural backgrounds, culture within the norm, the term ethnicity, wanting to leave their workplace. Why? Because these are the barriers they consider. There is bias. Again, reflect on your organization. Have you progressed in your organization? Have people of different cultural backgrounds in your organization progressed with the same rate of progress as you or others have? Why and why not? Let's be critical thinkers and not just accept culture as difference for our clients. Let's accept culture as a way of operation. Leadership model, access to network, and that's one of the biggest things. Sometimes, we know somebody who pick up the phone, hey, I've got a job coming, when you apply for it or come for an interview. Because people of different ethnic backgrounds do not have the extended networks that we have, they miss out. So how do we give them a hands up? Things to think about for ourselves as members of organizations who are decision makers as well. So let's talk within service delivery, we talk about cultural competence. So what does that mean? So it's about awareness. It's a cognitive model. It's about awareness. So we have to be aware of our own biases as well, and reactions to people who are different to us. It's about attitude. So beyond awareness, taking it a step further. I am aware of my own biases. But what do I do is that I take it a step further to examine my own sets of beliefs and values and how they impact on the actions I take. And that's very important, the attitude, because we want to build resilience in ourselves. It's very important. And then the knowledge, because it's also about equality. Especially for us working in the social service space, we're very committed to social justice. That is why we're doing the work that we're doing. So sometimes, we slip. So social justice is very important to us, and equality is very important. So if we just start looking at culture, one of the aspects, we could get on the slippery slope. It's a bit cold, isn't it? Yeah. I'm sorry, that was not part of culture, the cold bit. And then skills. I think within service delivery, a very important skill is communication. How we communicate with people around us and who work with us and to our clients. It's also about our, non-verbal communication. I remember a few years ago, I was working with a very multicultural team, ethnically multicultural team, and I had a Colombian caseworker. We assume that if somebody is not from the mainstream culture, that they understand all cultures. We make that assumption. So she was from Colombia. She was working with an Iraqi refugee. And, in all our organizations, when you're meeting with a client, you go to a private space, you lock yourself in a small room, and you talk. And this Iraqi refugee was not comfortable with sitting in a room with a woman, in a very small room with a woman sitting so close to him. And she wanted to make him feel comfortable, so she moved closer to him, and he moved further away. So they were in this dance, she moves closer and he moves away. And she was like, I can't work with this man, what's wrong? And even I thought, okay, I'll get, Marcela to work with this guy because she's Colombian, she'll understand culture. She totally didn't get it, and he totally couldn't understand what was going on. So for us to assume that just because you're not the mainstream, that you will understand all cultures is, I made that mistake and I learned from it. So I had to explain to Marcela. I didn't change Marcela, I just had to explain to her, he's a Muslim, he doesn't like contact, don't necessarily doesn't like contact. He's not comfortable with, close proximity with a female, especially if it's a closed space. So we had to change the way we do our business, our offices, the setting of the offices, and so on, so our clients feel comfortable. Because the majority of caseworkers are women. And the majority of us, have a lot of empathy, and so we don't notice our nonverbal communication. Because we're so empathetic, we get very close to people, we look them in the eye, and not everyone is comfortable about that. We touch them, not everyone is comfortable about that. How are we going? Are we good? Are we sleeping? So who's sleeping? We are all called, I think, yeah. So if you feel like you want to stand up, by all means, please do. If you feel you want to just walk around like me, because I'm a fidgety person, I can't stand in the one place all the time. Okay, so within the notion of cultural competency, I want to talk about cultural competency as a system. It's not just a set of skills. It's a system. Got 5 more minutes? 3 minutes? Okay, very quickly. As a system, because it's about the behaviors, the attitudes, the policies. It's not just about people going to a training, coming back and saying, we are culturally competent, tick, we can do all the amazing stuff that is expected of us. No. Even the organization has to be culturally competent, because it needs to demonstrate behavior, it needs to demonstrate attitude, it needs to have policies and structures in place to enable those who are working across cultures to work effectively. So the point of this conversation is that cultural competency is not an individual's responsibility, but an organizational system. It's also a process, it's a developmental process. So we can't go from here today and tomorrow expect that we will be totally culturally competent. It's a continuum. We take steps along that continuum, and we take them deliberately, and we take them, consciously, so that we know where we're heading. And I think that's the important bit. Again, it's about awareness, it's about skill, it's about knowledge along that continuum. Talked about empathy. That's a very important aspect of cultural competency. Not just culture as ethnicity, but culture across the range. About age, about sexuality, about all sorts of things. Even about privilege, because in most cases we work with people who are from low socioeconomic, and privilege is a culture, and poverty is also a culture. And women in poverty also are a cultural group in their own right. So what is appropriate service delivery? Awareness, we talked about that. But this awareness is about the socio-cultural factors that impact clients, but also impact us as staff, and impact the relationship we have amongst each other and with our clients. So it's that web of relationship and understanding, the socio-cultural impact. It's also about acceptance, and look at how responsibility is written. That's not a typo. It's as case workers, as people, it's our response, but it's also about our responsibility and our ability to understand the cultural aspects of the client. The client cannot come and say, look, I'm from Sudan, I eat this, I do this, I expect that, I want this done this way. Sometimes I even don't know what I want, but I feel it. So it's about being aware and understanding that awareness. And it's also about the willingness, to make service settings more accessible. We're here to help you, so we will do whatever we can to make the service more accessible. It's about us recognizing our personal biases. We all have biases. No worries. Let's just recognize that, accept it, and be aware of it. And we're biased against people, we're biased against culture, we're biased against organizations, we're biased against all sorts of things. We're complex beings. Fine, let's just be aware of it, and how that impacts what we do. We all know the respect thing, the tolerance thing. I don't like the word tolerance. I'd rather go for respect, because tolerance, again, assumes that I am superior, and I'm tolerating you because I am superior. So I'll delete that word. I'll censor that word. I'll just go for respect. And it's accepting the responsibility to address the other issues and not be part of them. The out-group thing, the racism, the classism, the ageism, all the isms in the work that occur in the service delivery setting. And they do of care. Again, it's a continuum. We could be sitting at the beginning of it, but it's a slippery slope as well.